Hello! This one is not scripted, so this is going to be fun. Por que você tá chorando? Okay. Yes! Hi! I tried to do like a book look inspired makeup look for the Hannah Wars. That did not go well. I also wanted to wear a Brazil soccer team t-shirt, but both the soccer team t-shirt and the national symbols were appropriated by the far right in Brazil, and now it signifies, racism and sexism and, just gender dumbassery, thanks to the president. So I decided not. Also, I wouldn't be able to wear that shirt anyways because I burned it. I wish I was kidding, I'm really not. The good thing about making videos in English is that my mom doesn't necessarily understand me, so she will then not know that I burned my Brazil soccer team t-shirt at a protest that I went, and she does not know that I did. Anyways, lots of different things happened in the month of June. The protests against police brutality, racism, and white supremacy have still carried on in the United States and throughout the world. Still going strong with a lot of attendance, massive crowds, and even though the media is not necessarily reporting them right now, the movement is still going strong. So I'm still gonna leave a couple of links in the description below so you can check that out. Another thing that has also been going on is coronavirus. So yeah, coronavirus cases have spiked in the US recently, but it's not like I am in a position to actually criticize anyone's handling of the coronavirus cases because after being chastised constantly for not saying a word about the 50,000 Brazilians who lost their lives due to COVID, the president of Brazil decided to pay homage to them like so. If that is not enough, then he decided to kidnap a dog. I wish I was kidding. I am not. The guy kidnapped a dog. Also, another thing that has happened in the month of June is that I read a couple of books. And because this is the least interesting thing of all of the things that I've mentioned in this video, that's what we're going to talk about today. So, let me find the books that I read this month and let me talk about them. Okay, work this month was very tiring, very hectic. So I didn't have the energy to read a lot, and if I did read, I picked up like some really easy, lighthearted things, or I intended to. We're gonna get that to a second, but I tried to, and I failed miserably, but okay. So the first book that I read this month is Born a Crime by Trevor Noah. The book comes in this edition that I received by my monthly subscription service in Brazil. So it comes in the box like this, and when you open the box or the cover or whatever, it comes with the actual book and also comes with this leaflet that has an interview with the author, a couple of other interesting informations about the book and the context of the book. The edition is super pretty. I'm super happy I have this one. Born a Crime is an autobiographical memoir written by comedian Trevor Noah that is mostly known for heading The Daily Show with Trevor Noah. What did I think about this book? I absolutely adored this book. I have known about Trevor Noah for a long time. I've watched the show. I always thought he was hilarious, but I didn't know how hilarious he could get until I actually read this book. Another unexpected effect of this book was that I developed a crush on Trevor Noah that I did not know that I had before. It was there. It was like on standby. But after I read this book, I was like, oh, we're having it. Okay. I liked his style. I liked how he could add levity to situations. Some situations were objectively a funny situation, but some other situations weren't as funny on a first glance. And the way that he wrote this, with a lot of levity involved, made so that some things that were very heavy-handed topics were treated with some lightheartedness. Another thing that I thought was really interesting was that he mentions in this book the different racial relations in South Africa. And I thought that this was a very interesting perspective, because like I said in my Angela Davis video, sometimes when we read things from the United States perspective, I can't really identify with that as a Brazilian, but I could identify with a lot of what Trevor Noah describes of South Africa's racial relations. Of course, South Africa had the apartheid, which is, a legal system of racial segregation that actively put black people as subhumans and sub-citizens, and Brazil never really had that institutionalized. But there are different effects or different things that happen in South Africa that are very similar to the experience that we have in Brazil. There is this one part that he explains that while he is mixed race, he is not colored. And what he means by that is that his mother is black and his dad is Swiss, so his dad is white, and he's a mixed race child. But he's not from the racial group called colored, who are the result of many centuries of miscegenation that are not quite sub-citizen level, but they're also not full citizen. And if they whiten themselves, they might get full citizenship under the apartheid regimen. I thought that was really interesting because in Brazil we have a similar group, and that group is called Pardo. So in Brazil you can identify yourself usually as black, as white, as Asian, or as Pardo. And Pardo is people who are not quite black, but they're also not white. If you're wondering what a Pardo person looks like, me. It looks like me. Obviously, the term Pardo has been a source of contentiousness amongst racial scholars in Brazil and the black movement in Brazil, because they say that Pardo is a way to erase blackness, and that is also correct. My grandma once told me that she was answering the census question, and the lady who was asking her the question said, what ethnicity are you? And my grandma answered, I'm black. And the census lady said, oh, black is so ugly. Don't put that. Let's put pardo because that's better. And I don't think I have enough words to describe you how much of a stern, serious, and no-nonsense woman my grandma is. So she was like, bitch, whatever. Because racial relations in Brazil are so complicated, being pardo carried a lesser weight than being black. So many people who would otherwise identify as pardo are now reclaiming their blackness, and I think that's amazing. I just cannot do that. And that was the first time I had to call my therapist this month. I called my therapist because I was like, what do I do with this racial identity that I don't know in Brazil, specifically in Brazil? I don't know what would happen in the US. When I went to Budapest in 2016, someone asked me if I was Turkish. Racially ambiguous. A little bit of everywhere. So that was one thing that I thought was really interesting to see, how different systems of oppression and domination could actually lead to similar results. Other topics that Trevor Noah talked in this book that I thought were really interesting and relevant was when he talked about domestic violence and his mother's abusive relationship with his stepdad, which eventually led to his mother being shot and surviving by a miracle. Even though he talks about it in a very lighthearted way, it's never made light of, if that makes sense. He's lighthearted in the way that he tells the story, but it's never made light of. It's never something that is not important. He's always very aware of the violence that women have to go through and how revolutionary and how, groundbreaking his own mother was. He loves his mother so much. It seeps through the book. And I think that is 75% of the reason why I developed a crush on Trevor Noah. Long story short, I gave this book 5 out of 5 stars. I absolutely adored it. I think he's super funny. I would highly recommend reading this book. Tá tudo bem?
Tô morrendo. Eu dei grito ali de
Você quer aparecer?
Not really.
Okay. It's fine.
My leg doesn't work anymore.
Okay.
I need water.
Okay.
Water.
Speaking of water, can you hand me my water bottle?
I guess so. It's full.
Yeah, that's why I want it. The next book that I read this month was Felix Ever After by Kiss and Calendar. So Felix Ever After is a novel about a young trans boy called Felix as he tries to navigate this weird world of almost graduating and having crushes and etc, etc. And I love Felix Ever After so much. There are so many things about this book that I absolutely loved. The first one is that Felix is dealing with some very difficult things, like his mother leaving, like his dad not quite being adapted or being used to or being accepting of his gender identity, like some of his friends being fucking assholes because of his gender identity, trying to figure out his own sexuality. And I think those are very interesting topics to be told in a YA book. But also it talks about some other very teenager type of things, like falling in love and wondering what photo to post on Instagram and making very bad decisions and not necessarily taking the time to assess a situation before diving straight on. Am I talking out of experience? The answer is yes. But I honestly think that my teenage years would have been a lot easier if I had books like Felix Ever After to keep me company. I absolutely adored the writing style. I thought it was so lighthearted. I loved Felix as a character, and the type of things that the antagonists in the book will make, you know, to create the tension and etc., are not things that I think are far-fetched to teenagers to do. And one thing that I'm very pissed off when I read YA, I'm gonna get to that in a second in the next book, but one thing that I feel very pissed about YA in general is that you're talking about the point of view of teenagers, but they have like the mental ability of an adult, and that is not the case. And I think Felix Ever After is like it was the first book that I read that really depicted teenagers in a way that felt extremely realistic. It's a very confusing time, and I think Kacen Callender did an amazing job of portraying that in this book. One thing that I felt kind of iffy about, that it's not really a bad thing, and I think it just happened because I'm an adult and I'm reading a YA book that depicts teenagers so well, and the target audience is clearly not my age demographic. One thing that I felt is that when the book was going into the descriptions of what transgender is, what bisexual is, what asexual is, and different sorts of identities within the LGBTQ plus spectrum, sometimes it felt a little like I was reading off of a dictionary of sorts. I was like, okay, I know that. I don't think that this is a negative of the book, and I'm not gonna put it that way. It just dampened my enjoyment of the book by this much because I already kind of knew that. So I was very interested in other things in the book. Like, for example, when Felix says right at the beginning of the book, "My name is Felix Love, but I can't fall in love." I think that it was so beautiful how in between lines Felix was also kind of going like, oh, no one would love me and no one would stand up for me, and how he would internalize these extremely violent opinions about his own gender identity and his own sexuality, and how the book will like slowly deconstruct those ideas until Felix goes like, oh, I'm worthy of love. I'm worthy of having friends who stand up for me. I'm worthy of being respected in my gender identity. I'm worthy of being respected as the person I am. Like when he figures out like I don't have to withstand abuse just to keep people in my life. I am deserving of having good friends. I am deserving of love. I am deserving of falling in love. And I was so interested in that. But most of the time I felt like this dynamic that was going like sort of in the background kind of got overshadowed by this sort of dictionary type of description. I do understand that if you are a teenager who are somehow questioning your gender identity or your sexuality, this kind of awkward, a little bit awkward exposition where people kind of look like they're reading off of a dictionary, that would be kind of like invaluable for people to go and be like, oh, I kind of identify with that. I wonder what that means. Oh my god, I didn't know people could feel that way. And I think that because this is a YA book, this is like the best way that things could be written, because I think that if I was a teenager questioning my bisexuality, like I was one day, and I had a book that would explain to me things in such a light way, this would be like my favorite book in my life. But I think I kind of missed my window there, so it felt a little bit flat for me, and I was more interested in the things that were going in the background and the themes that were going in the background than actually the whole exposition. But it did kind of like annoy me a little bit while I was reading the book. But then again, I'm not saying that this is a flaw of the book. This is the way that this book should have been written. But my enjoyment of the book was iffy about that, so I gave this book 4.5 out of 5 stars. And this was the second time that I had to call my therapist for the month, because I was like, why didn't I have a book like this when I was a teenager? And I needed someone to tell me that it was okay to want to kiss some girls. And my therapist was very kind and nice about it, as she always is. And she kindly told me to stop fucking crying. So thanks again, Sabrina. Amazing. And then after I was done with Felix Ever After, I read Six of Crows and Crooked Kingdom. Yeah, for the first time. Did I get spoiled? Absolutely. Did I cry? Absolutely. Lisa, why did you say Six of Crows and Crooked Kingdom? Because one, it's a duology, but two, I read the two books in 24 hours. It was like a 24-hour readathon, but I had just fucked up at work and I was feeling very miserable and I needed something to take me like away from what a giant disappointment I felt. So I just laid down in bed and read two books in 24 hours, like the most miserable readathon. Fun times. If you, like me until a month and a half ago, was living under a rock and did not know what the Grishaverse is. The Grishaverse is a series of books created by author Leigh Bardugo that talks about this country called Ravka, and there are Grisha in it, and Grisha are kind of like witches. Everybody hates the Grisha, but Ravka doesn't. It's kind of like in this universe. The first 3 books of the Grishaverse are the Grisha trilogy, that is Shadow and Bone, Siege and Storm, and Ruin and Rising. And I read Shadow and Bone last month, and I started on Siege and Storm also last month, but I DNF'd that because the Grisha trilogy it just wasn't it. It just wasn't it. Like, Alina is a fucking dumbass. You might not like the Darkling, and that's okay. He's a piece of shit. I know. Why do I know he's a piece of shit? Because I'm irrevocably attracted to him. My taste in men usually goes, if I scan a crowd and I find a guy and I'm like, oh, that guy is hot, there's an 80% chance that he's a serial killer. You know, because I know that I have shit taste in men, I saw the Darkling, I thought he was hot, and I was like, oh, he's going to fuck shit up. And I was right. Even if you're not attracted to wrong people, we have to admit that if you are a 17-year-old girl who just found out that she's incredibly powerful, but has kind of no idea how to deal with that power, and then this really old guy starts hitting on you and being very weird to you, but that guy is also like the most powerful Grisha alive, and then someone says, he wants to fuck you up, girl. First things first, you should have seen that one coming for like miles away, and Alina did not, and I was like, do you have a single functional brain cell? 2, this is the most powerful Grisha alive. Did you think that running away from him would work? At which moment did you go like, yeah, maybe running away from the most powerful guy in the world in this moment wouldn't be a good idea because he's going to fucking find me. Guess what he did? He fucking found her. Oh my god, who would have thought? Alina just went all surprised Pikachu and go like, you could see that one coming, oh my god. Like, I finished the book and I couldn't stop thinking like the only way Alina could have gotten out of that situation was if she, after Baghra told her what the Darkling wanted to do, she should have gone back to her room, pretended to be a stupid ass teenager in love with a guy 300 years older than her, and then in the last moment backstab the ever-living shit out of the guy. That's like a fail-proof plan, but it would require more than a single functional brain cell, and we've established that Alina has none. It's just... Anyways, I dislike Alina a lot. I also dislike Maul. Yeah, no, I was far more interested in the side characters, to be honest. Because I thought Zoya was intriguing, I thought Genya was intriguing. After I started reading the Grisha trilogy, I was like, do I really want to read Six of Crows? And then everybody was like, no, you gotta read Six of Crows. It's so much better than the Grisha trilogy. And I'm glad that I finally took advice, because I'm terrible at doing that, and started reading Six of Crows. And then it was just like the entire book was just the side characters that I liked in the trilogy. And I was like, yeah, I like this. Six of Crows is basically like this group of teenagers who have no responsible adult whatsoever to look after them, and they decide to go on a heist and break into the Ice Court, which is this palace, which is, no one could ever break into the palace. And the premise of the book was kind of like, okay, I started reading Six of Crows and I was very invested in the characters. I absolutely loved all of the main cast. Everybody just has this very specific personality that complements each other so well, and they are very flawed people, but they also have very interesting reasonings behind what they're doing, and I love that. I love how well-rounded and three-dimensional those characters were. But like the plot itself, I was like, okay, they're gonna break into the Ice Court, and I was like, well, that thing that you're thinking about, yes, we're gonna address the elephant in the room. But I thought, well, they're going to the ice court, and then there's going to be this heist. This heist is probably going to end on book 2, and that's probably gonna happen when the heist ends. And I was wrong. So I was kind of okay with the book for the first 3/4 of the book, and then for the last quarter of the book, I was like, oh no! So I was emotionally invested at that point. But because I had read through 3/4 of lukewarm plot but really good character development, I was like, okay, I'm into it. And then I read Crooked Kingdom. I did not expect all of the things that happened in Crooked Kingdom. I was not mentally prepared for any of them. Oh my god. I knew he was going to die. I knew he was going to die. I knew that. I knew that. Everybody spoiled that to me. And I still cried like a baby. I think the reason why I like the duology so much is because the stakes were really high. And it would be like just another YA story if everything had gone according to the plan. But it did not. It did not. Things like shit hit the fan so fucking fast. I feel like there is a difference between killing off a character because it's part of a plot and it's part of a point, and killing off characters just for shock value. I hate when authors kill off characters just for the shock value because I think that it's a cheap way to get the reader to feel something. And I think that the death that occurred felt attuned to the plot in a way that they were all the time talking about how impossible it will be if they manage to pull this off. Because they do some very weird shit and some very impossible types of shit, and you would expect, you know, it's a YA book, and you're like, okay, they're all gonna make it and they're gonna be happily ever after. But they're not. Also, by the way, the only happily ever after couple is Jesper and Wylan. The only gay couple in the book. The straight couples? Fucked. No one had a happy ending, but the gay couple have. After the last quarter of Six of Crows and then the entirety of Crooked Kingdom, like how the plot picked up and how, you know, all the decisions that the characters made came back to bite them straight in the ass, and I love some good biting in the ass. That did not sound the way that I wanted to sound. But there you have it. I absolutely adored the way that, you know, all the decisions that the characters made had some very dire consequences to all of them, and how their past was something that was very interesting and that added a lot to the dimension of the characters and explained a lot why they made some of the decisions that they made. Also, can we talk about Kaz and Inej? Can we talk about Kaz and Inej? The two most dangerous people in the group cannot touch. They cannot touch, and they love each other, but they cannot touch. And this is... I finished Crooked Kingdom and I read all 550 fanfictions of Kaz and Inej available on AO3, and I still want more. Okay, I get why this book is so hyped up by the book community, both on Book Twitter and on BookTube. Those are really good books. One thing that annoyed me, teenagers not acting like teenagers. And this annoyed me a little bit more because I feel like both Six of Crows and Crooked Kingdom are books that are supposed to be adult fantasy, not YA. Because I feel like there's so much more that could have been explored if the books were adult. Leigh Bardugo matured enough as a writer when she transitioned from the Grisha trilogy to the Six of Crows duology, not only because she stopped using first person because that worked so well for her, but because I feel like she managed to strike a really good balance of plot, characters, and, you know, the weight that decisions have. I don't think the villains felt cartoonish in this book because Darkling is like, basically, the Darkling is like a cardboard cutout of a Scooby-Doo villain. And we all saw it from miles away, except for Alina, because Alina is dumb. But I digress. And I think, this is gonna be an unpopular opinion, I think that Leigh Bardugo wasn't exactly in the top of her abilities as a writer when she wrote the Grisha trilogy, which is a pity because I feel like the Leigh Bardugo that matured more and wrote the Six of Crows duology would have done a far better job if she went back to the Grisha trilogy and did it again. I still haven't read King of Scars. Don't worry, I was already thoroughly spoiled, but I'm gonna put off reading King of Scars until the second part comes out. I think it's gonna be March 2021, and I'm gonna put off because I hate waiting. But it doesn't matter, I already know the entirety of the plot, and I already shipped Zoya Lai as fuck. Keep this information, it's gonna be more relevant in a second. But, to sum it up, I gave Six of Crows 4 out of 5 stars, and then I gave Crooked Kingdom 5 out of 5 stars. And then I called my therapist again. I called my therapist to go on and on about how it's so unfair that bad things happen to good people, and it's so sad that some people don't know better and they're forced to live this life of hatred. And she thought I was talking about real life people, but she was very concerned when she heard that I was talking about fictional characters. So sorry, Sabrina. The next book that I read for the month of June was Women, Race and Class by Angela Davis. I have a full video that is extremely long about this one book. While I was rereading this book, I was annotating it and highlighting it in my specific way that I do with my academic books, and that took a lot of my willpower, but also I was still digesting Crooked Kingdom. So I just dedicated 2 weeks of my month to actually finishing this book, annotating it, and actually making the script for the video. But if you want to know, I gave Angela Davis's Women, Race and Class 5 out of 5 stars. Can you put academic books on Goodreads though? Huh. Good question. After I was done with that, I was like, well, I needed something lighthearted after reading Women, Race and Class and after going through the emotional damage of Crooked Kingdom. Kate from Twitter said that this book called Hard Sell by Lauren Lane read a lot like Zoya and Nikolai alternative universe type of shit. And I was like, okay, I'm gonna download it. It was free on Kindle Unlimited, so I was like, well, why not? So about this book, it's basically a story about this one hotshot young wonder child investor who gets himself in kind of a PR mess, and then he hires this PR agent specialist to pretend to be his girlfriend, and that obviously ends up with both of them falling in love because, you know. First things first, I had already read that book before, but I did not remember a single fucking word of it. So we were off to a very great start. It's cookie cutter. You know what's gonna happen. There's a couple of sex thrown in the middle. It was okay also. Or maybe just after I graduated, many of my friends actually became investment bankers or became investment lawyers. So many of my friends moved over to São Paulo. I have spent so much time with investment bankers and investment agents and investment attorneys that I cannot find any of it hot. It's so mind-bogglingly boring. I did not think that the guy was all that hot because, investment people are, a dime a dozen. So, the story was okay. It was what I needed. I needed something lighthearted, and I needed something that wouldn't take too much of my brain power to understand. There was just enough sex in it to keep my attention, and I was like, okay. But I could turn my brain off, and that was what I needed. So I gave it 3 out of 5 stars. Then the month was almost over, and I was like, well, I need something very cute, very soft, very sweet to close the month. And then I picked up The Henna Wars. Oh my god, I'm gonna try not to cry. Okay, shit. Okay, I'm gonna try not to cry. I cried just thinking about this book. Okay, get it together, get it together, get it together. The Henna Wars is the debut novel of Adiba Jai Girdhar. Basically tells the story of this young girl called Nishat, and Nishat is of Bengali descent, and when we meet Nishat in the book, she is about to tell her parents, that her very Muslim traditional parents, that she's a lesbian. That doesn't go too badly, but it also doesn't go well, so it's kind of this weird limbo that Nishat is thrown in. While Nishat is trying to deal with that, she also meets again this girl who she went to school with called Flavia. And Flavia is an Irish-Brazilian girl who studied with Nishat when they were very young. They meet again in a wedding because Flavia's older sister is a bridesmaid in this wedding, and then they go to the same school together. And then Nishat is like, I'm so gay. The school decides to bring up this business competition, and each student has to come up with a really good business idea. And Nishat, being Bengali, she's like, well, okay, I'm gonna start a henna business. And then Flavia is like, oh, I'm gonna start a henna business as well. And then Nishat is like, wait, what? Basically, that's the plot of the book. I'm not gonna say more because I don't want to spoil it. What drew me to this book in the first place, was it the sapphic YA lovey-dovey type of relationship? Yes. But was it because Flavia is Brazilian? Not actually. I actually found that out when I started reading the book, and I freaked the fuck out. I was like, oh my god, this can either go really bad or this can be super good. The problem is that Flavia in the beginning of the book doesn't understand that the henna is a part of Nishat's culture. And because it's part of Nishat's culture, she can't just profit out of it. It's different because Nishat is the one who was raised with it. It has a cultural significance to her, but it's not the same for Flavia, who just saw that at a wedding one day and then decided that she wanted to do the same. Also, Flavia has this one cousin called China. China is a white girl, and her name is written with a Y. Okay, and China is just generally a horrible person. Flavia really wants to please her cousin because her cousin is from her Irish part of the family, a part that she's kind of estranged because she's also half Brazilian. Things were going okay with the book. I started like nitpicking, I have to admit, I started like nitpicking it for a bit. I was like, well, the Portuguese is a little bit off. There's this one part that Michaud goes to Flavia's house, and when they get there, Flavia's mother kind of teases her about Michaud for a little bit, and Flavia is like, mãe, por favor. And like, no Brazilian teenager would say things like that. It's not very natural. I feel like Brazilian teens would be like, mãe, pelo amor de Deus. I've done that a couple of times. Brazilian mothers are relentless, dude. They also started discussing Romero Brito, and I thought that was so good because she was right. Romero Brito is really contentious in Brazil, and the correct answer is that Romero Brito sucks. So then lots of things happen. Michaud gets into this really beautiful process of growing up and accepting her identity, and her parents also making an effort to accept her identity, and they start off kind of rocky, and then they kind of meet halfway, and that was beautiful, but that was not the part of the book that really spoke to me. I'm gonna read it. I'm going to try not to cry. Also, I know my Kindle is very old and I don't care. So basically in this scene, Michaud is asking Flavia why she's not out as a bisexual girl to her cousin and her friends. This is what Flavia answers. I'm gonna try not to cry. Okay. Oh god. Well, you know, it's not exactly easy to be Brazilian here. When people think of Brazil, they think, I don't know, futebol, carnival, partying, whatever. And all the boys think, because I'm a Brazilian girl, I'll be up for anything. You don't know the way they look at me, the things they say. After the party, I just kept thinking how much worse it would be if it was true that I was bisexual. Brazilian and bisexual, I would never hear the end of it. Oh shit, I'm gonna ruin my entire fucking makeup. I cannot tell you how utterly frustrating it is that you have a country that is so rich and so vibrant and so full of culture, and the only thing that people take away of it is to see you as a sex object. I cried for so long after I read this because I felt like, oh shit, this is what representation feels like. Every time people talk about being Brazilian, people always talk about the happiness. They never talk about the ugly parts of it. And I'm not talking about, oh, there's so much violence in Rio de Janeiro. I'm talking about being from a country that was bled dry and still being expected to give away everything. I get so upset about it because like I'm so proud of my culture and my country. I'm so proud of how resilient we are. I'm so proud of all of that. And it's just so tiring to be reduced to be something to be used all the time. I'm trying really hard to keep it together here. I don't know, just I read this paragraph and I just instantly felt drawn to so many things that I've heard while I was abroad, and so many things that I've had said to me when I was online, and it's just like, do you know how hard it is to be Brazilian and bisexual? It's very fucking hard. It's very fucking hard. Needless to say, when I reached that point in the book, I was blown away by the care and the respect and the love that the representation of Brazilian people got. Flavia never stopped to be happy, but this is a huge part of her identity, just as this is a huge part of mine. And then I called my therapist. This paragraph evoked a couple of memories that I actually had to work through in therapy. I do recognize that the purpose of the book was not to give Brazilian girls some representation, but I was so overwhelmed by this amount of representation that I instantly felt so grateful for this book. I knew that this was going to be a 5-star read. On a lighter note, however, the only thing that I do have to point out for Flavia's representation as Brazilian is that A, Brazilians are very musical and we flirt a lot through music, and B, Brazilians have a long-standing tradition of sapphic singers and songwriters who are very famous, and I just would love to see Flavia being like, hey, so I listened to this song yesterday and I thought of you, and Michaud just receiving the song and being like, what the fuck does this mean? What the fuck does this mean? And the song just being like,
estranho seria se eu não me apaixonasse por você. O sal viria doce para os novos lábios.
quando chego ali e entro no elevador, aperto 12 que é o seu andar. Não vejo a hora de te encontrar. Mãe! Mãe, Bolsonaro testou positivo pro coronavírus. Saiu na Folha de São Paulo.
And I'm not saying she deserved it, but I'm saying God's timing is always right.
So yeah, if you couldn't tell, I gave the Hannah Wars 5 out of 5 stars for the complete destruction of my heart. So these were all of the books that I read in the month of June. I hope that you enjoyed this rambling of mine. I really hope Bolsonaro caught the virus. I really hope Bolsonaro caught the virus. I really hope okay, oh God, oh Jesus, forgive me. Oh, I'm so sorry. Oh God, oh God. And if you're wondering about my July TBR,
we don't do that here.
anyways, I'm fine. I'm good. My therapist is amazing. I worked through all of the trauma. I'm still a bit emotional, but we're working through it. If I can give you an advice, go to therapy. Therapy is great. I absolutely would recommend. I would give my therapist 6 out of 5 stars for being amazing. Yeah, this was my June wrap up. I hope you enjoyed this video, and we'll see you next time. Goodbye.